Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
There is a time, Christian brother and sister, that you need to bring out the heavy lumber and you need to lay a whack upon the head of Satan, and you need to see that piece of lumber, and you need to remind yourself, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. I don't care if there's 300,000 infantrymen. I don't care if there's 10,000 men on horses with swords, and I don't care if there's 20,000 tanks coming against me. Greater is he who is in you, who is fighting for you, than the one who fights against you.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the word.
Sometimes the best defense while fighting a spiritual battle is having a good offense. When Jesus was tempted in the wilderness by the devil, the Lord always quoted the Word of God. God's Word is called the sword of the Spirit because it's a great offensive weapon against the enemy. Today, Pastor Ray will be challenging you to study and meditate on the Word of God so that when the battle comes, you'll be better prepared and have victory over the temptations of Satan. Well, let's join Pastor Ray in the book of Joshua, chapter 11, for today's edition of Light of the Word.
Christian, do you believe Romans 8:28? All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. We will be victorious in personal holiness. Any personal holiness that you want to take, God will take it for you and with you. All you have to do is want it. You know, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is John 20:20. Jesus has risen from the dead. It's the first day of the week. The disciples are behind the closed door. They're fearful. They're figuring that Rome and the Jews are coming for them now. They got Jesus. They're going to find us. We're going to the cross next. There's going to be 11 cross and all the other disciples. They're going to hang us up on this cross and we're going to follow Jesus. And they're fearful. And Jesus comes through the door. And what does he say? Peace be with you. In the midst of their greatest fear, he says, peace be with you. And then verse 20, the beautiful passage, he says, it says, and he showed them his hands and his side. And it says, and they were glad. And you know what I always say to you, Christian? When you're in the midst of fear, when you're in the midst of what you feel like you're outnumbered, when you're in the midst of something that seems impossible to beat and overcome, get 20/20 vision by going back to the cross. Get your 20/20 vision and go back and see those nail-scarred hands and that nail-scarred side, and you will remember, my God is victorious. My God is a champion, and my God fights for me. And we've read this throughout Joshua continually. My God fights for me. And so there's another verse that I want you to remember, and I want you to always call upon when you're in this battle, when you feel outnumbered and you think you're going to lose. It's 1 John 4:4. Get out the piece of lumber. This is a 4x4. 1 John 4:4. Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. As Greg Laurie likes to quote it, greater is he who is in the world than he who is after you. There is a time, Christian brother and sister, that you need to bring out the heavy lumber and you need to lay a whack upon the head of Satan, and you need to see that piece of lumber, and you need to remind yourself, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. I don't care if there's 300,000 infantrymen. I don't care if there's 10,000 men on horses with swords, and I don't care if there's 20,000 tanks coming against me. Greater is he who is in you, who is fighting for you, than the one who fights against you. And then the Lord would come, speak of this, greater is he who is in you. Verse 6, but the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid because of them. For tomorrow about this time I will deliver a 4x4 upon their head, all of them slain before Israel. You shall hamstrung their horses and burn their chariots with fire. Oh, isn't it a beautiful thing? And may we always run to it every day. Don't wait for the trial. Don't wait for the tribulation period that you're in. Every morning, come and just meet with the Lord. What a word that the Lord would give Joshua. Can you imagine? Why? Always, do not be afraid. He would only say that because Joshua was afraid. If Joshua wasn't afraid, he wouldn't have to say it. Joshua, don't be afraid. Tomorrow about this time, I'm going to beat them. I'm going to slay them. I'm going to wipe them all out. And you can imagine Joshua's morning devotion there with the Lord or the evening devotion, the continual time that he would spend. Joshua would go into that word and he would get up in power. And he would come out and he would walk among his troops. He'd walk among his family. He'd walk around the children, and he would walk in power and confidence and say, tomorrow. I know you see a sea of people and chariots and horsemen, but tomorrow the victory's ours. And he would walk in a confidence. And, I don't think there's a more beautiful time in all my time. Every day, I love the time before the dawn. While it's still dark, the house is still quiet. I love to have that cup of coffee with the Lord, open my word, and just let him speak to me through his word. And there are many times I will go in, I'll be full of anxiety. I'll be anxious about things. I'll be fearful of how things are going to turn out. I know there's a war that's against me and against the church and all these things. And I stop and I spend this time here before the Lord, and then all of a sudden, peace. And not just peace, power. To get up and say, my God will give us a victory. John Piper, great Bible teacher, he said, until you realize that life is war, you cannot understand what prayer is for. And that is so true. The Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We go into that. We're seeking an awesome God, a holy God, a God who fights for us, a God of strength, a God who's got the heavy lumber for anything that comes against us. But then the whole other half of that is thy kingdom come, thy will be done. We know there's a kingdom that is on this earth fighting against his kingdom, the kingdom of the evil one. And there's a will of people against his will. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And there's a war. And as John Piper, I like his quote, until we realize that life is war, we cannot know what prayer is for. In your prayer time, there's a time to pull out heavy lumber. And I hope you remember this picture here, a 4x4, and sometimes you got to wield it, and sometimes you got to use it. And you know what? As Renee picked it up, she goes, this is heavy. And it is, even for me. And I work out. Sometimes prayer is heavy. Sometimes prayer is work. Sometimes you're having coffee with the Lord. Sometimes you're going into the weight room with the Lord. Sometimes your prayer room is a weight room, and you're going to have to do heavy lifting. You know what I like, though? Joshua, don't be afraid. Tomorrow, about this time. I would be, could you be a little more specific? Like about what? Like 30 minutes before this, 30 minutes past? What's about mean to you? I mean, if a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is like a day. What's this about thing? Could you be really specific? I would want the Lord to be very specific. Tomorrow before noon, I will have them all crushed. But instead, God's like, about this time tomorrow. You know what I see? God's not fretting. God's like, I don't know, I'm gonna have my coffee. I'm gonna answer some prayer mail, read some verses, look over my creation, stand, and then I'm going to come. I'm going to crush them. I'm going to wipe them out. 300,000, 10,000, and 20,000, that's nothing. Christian, God's not in heaven pacing. You don't need to pick up the pace for him. He's not marching, oh boy, what am I going to do? 300,000. I could take 300,000. What am I going to do about these 10,000 guys on horses? 20,000 chariots. How do I? God's like, wow. As soon as I finish my coffee tomorrow, Joshua, I'll come see you and we'll go take care of some business. God's not fretting. You don't need to fret. Verse 7 through 9. So Joshua and all the people of war with him came against them suddenly by the waters of Merom, and they attacked them. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, who defeated them and chased them to the greater Sidon, to the brook of Misporah and the valley of Mizpah. Eastward they attacked them until they left none of them remaining. So Joshua did to them as the Lord had told him, and he hamstrung his horses and burned their chariots with fire. Here's a key to victory, guys. And it's the follow-up after the victory. And what do I mean by that? Ever been in? God puts us in a trial. God puts us into a furnace. God puts us into a place of pressure. And as we're in that place of pressure, he starts showing us things about ourselves. And then we start realizing, you know what, I need to make some changes in my life. This pressure and this stress that's coming against me, it's making me see, I haven't been faithful in the things of prayer or the word. Or, you know what, God's showing me things about myself that need to change and continually change. Or God's showing me and teaching me things, and I've come out and I learned things. I want to go and share these with people that they might understand. I want to get involved in a prison ministry or with a children's church, or street ministry, or up at the park for the kids without mothers and fathers and those things. And we're in the trial and we're saying, Lord, when I get through this, I will do this. But so many times we get through it, God brings us through, and we go, that was awesome. You know what? I think I'm going to take a nice vacation. Some people even go, I'm going to take a break from ministry, because it's been such a battle, I just need a rest. And God's like, no. I told you to hamstrung those horses. I told you to burn the chariots. Joshua was obedient through it. He brought victory, and a key to the next victory is finishing off this one with every last thing that God had said. And if you're in the midst of a trial and God shows you some follow through, because it will give you the finish to that past battle, and it will prepare you for the next battle. Because many times God puts us in these situations because I want to show you things that you just won't see on the sunny beach and the sandy seashores. I'm going to put you in a hard place, and then you're going to go and you're going to make some changes. Why did Joshua not take the F-16s and not take the tanks? Why did he hamstrung the horses? That means to clip their Achilles so then they can't become warrior horses. Maybe they can still be used for cattle or plowing, I don't know. But they can't be used for war. And then why did he burn those chariots and totally destroy those chariots? Because God does not want us. He did not want Joshua taking them and putting them into his military and think, the next battle. I can't wait for the next battle. Look at this technology that I have, because you can guarantee you this. The next battle, it wouldn't read like verse 6, Joshua, do not be afraid, because Joshua would be like, man, I got 10,000 horses. I got 20,000 tanks. I am going to totally destroy anybody that comes against us. God, make sure you will always rely on me. You know what? It's good to be dependent. It's good to need the Lord. And I'll tell you what, I can look back and think of so many things that I spent so much time for in technology as application in the ministry. Oh, we can get this technology down and use this technology. Oh, what God can do with it. You know what? I still come to every last time. Nothing beats just crying out to the Lord, Lord, would you move in people's hearts? Lord, would you send your gospel forth? Lord, would you raise up evangelists? Would you raise up servants of the Lord? Would you make us see your glory and be filled with your glory, and nothing moves? And I think there's a place, especially in our day and age, we can get so wrapped up in our technology. We must trust the Lord. Verse 10 through 14. Again, like I said, we'll be taking greater clips because the book changes. Now it's going to start getting into inheritance, but we're into the finishing of the battles here. Joshua turned back at that time and took Hazor and struck its king with the sword, for Hazor was formerly the head of all those kingdoms. And they struck all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was none left breathing. Then he burned Hazor with fire. So all the cities of those kings and all their kings Joshua took and struck with the edge of the sword. He utterly destroyed them as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. But as for the cities that stood on the mounds, Israel burned none of them except Hazor, only which Joshua burned. And all the spoils of these cities and livestock the children of Israel took as booty as for themselves, but they struck every man with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, and they left none breathing. If you do any reading study or you get the blessing to go to Israel, and I would love to put a trip together for us to go to Israel. We'll see what the Lord might bring. A 2-week tour of Israel. It's worth a whole semester of Bible college, a whole year of Bible college. I'll tell you that. But if you go there, or if you just read the archaeology book, they found Hazor, huge. It's like Jericho was about 10, 20 acres max. Hazor is dug out and is estimated to be about 200 acres. It's a huge city. But here's the interesting thing. Only 2 cities Joshua burned, Jericho and Hazor. And the archaeological digs, you'll find the rubble and the ruins. And guess what else you'll find spread in between the ruins? Ashes. Ashes. Jericho and Hazor, perfect confirmation of what we read here today. Joshua burned it. So just an awesome thing there. But why burn Hazor? Why burn that one and not the other ones? If you find Hazor, some historical studies and research, Hazor is up in the north. This is the campaign in the north. Hazor has major roads. It was a major transportation route, a major trading route. So basically, if you were working any type of trade and travel through the north, you would come through Hazor. I think Joshua is making an example, and I think God is telling him to make this example. When people would come from the outside, as they came into Israel and they would see Hazor, they would remember this one thing. This is the God of this nation. 200 acres, the king, the one who would gather and lead the revolt, their God has no problem wiping him out. And I think it also sends another message. Hazor, because it's the Canaanite city, it's wicked. All of them are wicked. Hazor is the capital, the leader. Therefore, it must have been the extreme of wickedness. And when people would come into the land, they would come in and they go, I remember that place used to have little girly shows over there. I remember over here you could buy some of these drugs. I remember over here, the strip of bars and drunkenness and the debauchery. Look at it's all burned. God, Joshua, sending a message to any outsider, don't bring that stuff into this country. This stuff will be burned. We don't tolerate it. So if you think you're going to come in and try to sell it to us, if you think you're going to come in and try to distribute it here, let this be a picture to you. We will burn it, destroy it. And I think that's a picture Joshua gives to all the families of Israel. When you go take these other cities as promised, when you go into the buildings that you didn't build and eat the vineyards that you didn't plant and labor in, when you go into those homes, you go and you rip out all these idols, burn it. You go in and you rip out their channels. You go in and you rip out their internet favorite sites. You go in and you burn their clothes. You don't dress like them. None of these things that were them and what depicted this whole country. Look at Hazor and burn it. And so the picture is for us as Christians. If not, you know what, parents, will do it for your kids. Do it for your kids so that they don't think by any means that any of these things are acceptable. And here's verse 15, what I want my life to be summarized as the Lord had commanded Moses his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Nothing left undone. And may that be our lives, and may we make that a calling today before we leave this place. Lord, I'm going to leave nothing undone. Everything that you've asked me, everything you've called me to, everything that you lay out before me as a follower of Christ, I'm going to leave none of it undone. These things that you called me, I'm going to be like Joshua, and I'm going to finish him. And so we see Joshua, he was victorious because he trusted and he obeyed. And now let's take a look at verse 16 through 18. Thus Joshua took all this land, the mountain country, all the south, all the land of Goshen, the lowlands and the Jordan plain, the mountains of Israel and its lowland. Verse 17, from Mount Helek and the ascent of Seir, even as far as Baal-Gad and the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon, he captured all their kings and struck them down and killed them. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. We've been in Joshua for 12 weeks. We can take and think that they roll in. Week 1, they took Jericho. Week 2, they went up, they took Ai. And then week after week, as we've been studying this, if you go and read in other places, you look at the age of Caleb and do some reverse math there, they have fought up to this point for 7 years. Hey, Christian, this war is going to be for a long, long time. We are not going to go in and turn over and have these victories in days, weeks, months. It's going to be a long, long time. And you have to prepare yourself for the battle that it's going to be a long, long time. And I just say that to any Christian, especially you younger Christians in the Lord, those who have just come to the Lord, maybe you youth are just beginning your walk with the Lord as your own independent person and being. It is a long, long war. And I can remember, I think I'd been saved, like 2 years, should have been the next Billy Graham by then, right? After 2 years, hey, I've been saved for 2 years, man. I'm reading the Word. I've read through the Bible already 3 times or 4, whatever it was. And these things, I'm amazed. I don't curse at people when they cut me off. Look how far I've come. I'm so mature and all these things. And I found myself, and I just remember just tripping into this thing of, how did this happen? I was shocked. I was shocked with myself that I could trip and fall. I go, well, I've been saved for 2 years. I don't understand how I could not have perfect victory in all these things. I don't understand how I'm not this mature super Christian at this point. How did this happen to me?
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right.
The book of Joshua continues the story of Israel, joining them as they prepare to finally enter the land God promised them. Their trials were far from over, however. Though the land had been given to them, the current inhabitants needed to be driven out. The Israelites needed to continue to lean on God for protection and guidance, and for a conclusion to this chapter of their story. There was no way they could accomplish complete victory on their own, even though they tried at times. Once they let go and allowed God to move, though, great things happened, and they were reminded again of the faithfulness of their Creator. We're so glad you joined us today for Pastor Ray's study in the book of Joshua on Light of the Word. If you'd like to hear more teachings from this study, you can do so by visiting ccaac.org. We'd love to stay in touch with you too, so don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter while you're there. Do you have a prayer request you'd like to share with us, or do you have any questions? If so, please take a moment to email us at mail@ccaac.org or give us a call at 443-995-3282. That's 443-995-3282. Thanks for listening today to Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made